Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. We know you're busy. We know you have a lot to do. That's why we've put together a recap of what we thought was the most interesting story from each day, the Crime Talk Weekly Recap. Enjoy it. Have a great day. First on the docket, the affidavit related to the arrest of Chad Daybell was released Friday evening. We went live for a little over an hour and a half, going through it in great detail. If you want to watch that video, you can hit the link below. But a quick recap of it is quite simple. The Rexburg Police Department is working with the FBI, and basically through cell phone data analysis, they were literally able to determine Alex Cox's cell phone location within basically 6 meters of where the phone actually was. For those who aren't familiar with that, Alex Cox was the brother of Lori Vallow, who it would probably be fair to say, based upon the affidavit of arrest warrant, was heavily involved in the disappearance of JJ and Ty Lee. It also appears that Chad Daybell was involved in some nefarious conduct as well. And like I said, the previous video from Friday night, we go in great detail about that affidavit, so we're not going to go through everything again. But a couple of things that I would love to just get your thoughts about. And the more I thought about it over the weekend, the affidavit states that when the agents and police officers began digging up ground on his property where JJ and Ty Lee were ultimately found, the police note in the affidavit that he kept watching the police and ultimately drove away. Once they found remains, they went and pulled him over and ultimately arrested him. And I just have to wonder what was going through his head other than, holy crap, they're going to find those bodies, and he was trying to get away. The question is, where do you think he was probably going to go? Now, you may recall last week as well, the attorney for Lori Vallow filed a motion for the request to have a copy of the affidavit in the Chad Daybell matter. So clearly he didn't know. And so obviously, the whole world has it, so Mr. Means, Lori Vallow's attorney, must have that now. Wouldn't you love to be a fly on the wall when Mr. Means goes through that affidavit with Lori Vallow? I would love to be there and just see the look on her face when all that information is being read to her, or she is reading it herself. She has got to think, oh, the gig is up. Now, as we do here on Crime Talk, we give you the facts, and we're going to give you the analysis as it relates to what the defense would be in this particular case. Now, based upon what I know, and we don't know what evidence is forthcoming as it relates to various cell phone analysis of Chad Daybell's phone and his records, or that of Lori Vallow. So that will certainly be interesting to see how that works out as well, if there's other text messages that may have been located, as well as just the data showing text messaging back and forth or calls as well. But clearly from the affidavit, the defense is really going to have to show that there was no conspiracy. Obviously, Alex Cox must have somehow taken this whole zombie stuff to the extreme, and he is the one that obviously harmed JJ and Lori Vallow. And for whatever reason, they didn't come forward. Maybe it was because they were scared, or maybe they were even afraid of someone associated with Alex Cox after his untimely demise. We're simply going to have to see how this case develops. Obviously, the preliminary hearing for Chad Daybell is not going to go on July 1st and 2nd as planned. Now it's set into August. So we'll see what moves are made and whether anyone is going to start rolling on anyone to start saving themselves. Never a dull moment with this particular case. Ex-Atlanta police officer Garrett Rolfe, who has been charged with the murder of Rayshard Brooks, wants a bond hearing. Apparently, he doesn't like jail. And guess what? His attorney is making some pretty bold allegations to get him out. Now, obviously, the standard bond argument is that your client is not a danger to the community or a flight risk. And the attorneys for Mr. Rolfe state that in the motion. But what they're also stating is that the information contained in the affidavit for the arrest warrant was wrong. And in fact, I think you can actually say that Rolfe's attorneys believed that the information presented in the affidavit was fabricated, not accurate. Now, we have talked about this. When anyone goes towards the court and asks for a warrant, whether for an arrest or a search warrant, you have to put all the good and bad information in there. And if you mislead the court, it could completely jeopardize the entire case if the information was bad. That's what Mr. Rolfe's attorneys are alleging in this particular situation. They're stating that the Fulton County District Attorney did not rely upon the Georgia Bureau of Investigation to complete their investigation. That investigation usually takes 60 to 90 days, and it hasn't been completed, and the district attorney has not consulted with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation at all regarding charging documents. Additionally, the attorneys for Mr. Rolfe also state that the district attorney cited the wrong legal standard as it relates to the use of force, particularly deadly force, when a police officer is in fact threatened with deadly force. These are significant factors that the court is going to have to consider. Now, most courts don't like to admit that they're wrong and say something was withheld from me. However, it can certainly be appealed to a higher court if the bond reduction is denied. Now, Mr. Rolfe's attorneys have asked for an emergency hearing, so they're trying to expedite this and get this heard rather quickly. We'll see what action, if any, the court will take on it. The district attorney will more than likely supplement any information that they have learned since the affidavit was filed with the court. However, if it is truly exculpatory, the district attorney may have some explaining to do to the court, because courts do not like to be misled in signing affidavits for arrest warrants or search warrants. The Ahmed R Barry case. The three suspects in this case have officially been indicted. That's Travis McMichael, the alleged shooter, Gregory McMichael, the man who helped drive, and then William Roddy Bryant, who allegedly trapped Mr. Ahmed R Barry with his car, repeatedly, ultimately resulting in his death by multiple gunshot wounds to the chest. Each defendant is charged with 1 count of malice murder, 4 counts felony murder, 2 counts aggravated assault, 1 count false imprisonment, and 1 count criminal attempt to commit false imprisonment. All 3 of the defendants remain in custody. A preliminary hearing has already been held. At that hearing, the court found that probable cause did exist for the case to be bound over. Now the case will be set for an arraignment. It's anticipated that all 3 men will enter pleas of not guilty. And for those of you who do not recall, the McMichaels believed and claimed that they thought that R Barry matched the description of a burglary suspect, and ultimately Travis McMichael fired the fatal shots on February 23rd of this year during a struggle with Ahmad. This came after all 3 men chased down Mr. R Barry. The police alleged that no one, including the suspects, had any right to stop or confine R Barry, and Brian was working with Brian and McMichaels by repeatedly using his vehicle to trap R Barry when he was trying to get away. Now, we've seen this video many times. Clearly, Mr. R Barry is going back and forth to get away from the McMichaels and Mr. Brian. And in this particular case, I took a lot of heat. Everyone says, oh, he was a criminal, he was running. Nope. No evidence that he stole anything. And also I took a lot of heat when I said the stand your ground wasn't going to work because, well, Travis McMichaels was the initial aggressor by getting out of the car and pulling a gun on him. Ultimately, this will be a decision for the jury to decide, But legally, none of the defenses that these individuals were raising was going to be a legally valid one, which would result in no charges being brought. We will continue to follow this case. Obviously, this is just a series of cases, and this is why I get flack. I call it the way I see it. I think the McMichaels were completely wrong. They never should have got out of that vehicle. They should have simply called the police. Then we have the case of Rashad Brooks, where looking at that video, some people get upset when I said that this is a situation that clearly looks like it's awful but lawful. Looks like the police may be justified. We'll see what the Georgia Bureau of Investigation case comes down. And then the third case out there has been the George Floyd case, where the officers are appropriately charged. So no matter what I say, someone's going to be upset by whatever I say, but we try to call it based upon the facts and the law that's presented. Next on the docket, Derick Chauvin's boss said he knew exactly what he was doing. Minneapolis Police Chief Medaria Arredondo, the chief said that the officers knew what was happening. One intentionally caused it, and the others failed to prevent it, he said. This was murder. This was not a lack of training. According to the chief, both Chauvin and Tao both received training to avoid suffocation in people being restrained in a prone or face-down position. And obviously, they received training that you probably shouldn't put your knee in somebody's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Next on the docket, Elijah McLean. You may not be familiar with this name, but I think you are going to be real soon. Well, Governor Jared Polis has appointed the state's attorney general to reopen the investigation into the death of Elijah McLean, who was a 23-year-old black man from Aurora, Colorado, who died last summer after police placed him in a chokehold. The district attorney from Adams County refused to prosecute this particular case, but some 3 million people filed a petition to have this matter further investigated, and Governor Polis appointed Attorney General Phil Weiser. And Phil Weiser made a statement stating, quote, "Whenever someone dies after an encounter with law enforcement, the community deserves a thorough investigation. Our investigation will be thorough, guided by the facts, and worthy of public trust and confidence in the criminal justice system," end quote. Now, it's reported, and body cam footage shows, that McLean was reportedly walking home from a convenience store on August 24th when police responded to a call of a, quote, "suspicious man." He had on a ski mask. Officers detained McLean by placing him in a chokehold. Paramedics arrived on the scene and injected him with a large dosage of ketamine for the purpose of sedating him. Body cam footage shows McLean being wrestled to the ground, vomiting, crying, and gasping, "I can't breathe," as the police continued to detain him. 3 days later, he was declared brain dead, and an autopsy as to the cause of death was found to be inconclusive. Now, McLean's mother, Shella, pointed her finger directly at the officers who arrested him as being responsible for his death. She believes that they, in fact, murdered him. They were bullies with a badge. In November of 2019, Dave Young, the district attorney for Adams County, which includes Aurora, declined to charge the officers involved in the exchange. And after a February 2020 Police Force Review Board inquiry, it was determined that the officers had a lawful reason to engage McLean and that the use of force was, quote, "within policy and consistent with training," end quote. But a petition reportedly signed by almost 3 million people, Polis was moved to take a new look at the case. In addition, Young's office has received more than 10,000 calls and 2,000 emails asking for the 3 officers linked to McLean's death to be removed from the Aurora Police Department. Now, before everybody gets fired up about Mr. McLean wearing a ski mask in August, apparently he is anemic and is constantly cold. He's apparently rather introverted, as you can hear on the police body cams, where he's asking the police officers to stand back. And in his spare time, he apparently goes and plays the violin at animal shelters for the animals. Hardly a hardened street criminal. We'll see how this case ultimately winds up. There's apparently going to be a large protest in Aurora, Colorado this weekend regarding this particular case. And hopefully, it stays peaceful.